Good morning, everybody. Glad you're here. Got a nice, bright, sunshiny day here. I think it's a little chilly out there, though. But I hope all's well with you and where you are. We're going to talk on a subject this morning that we've hit on before, never to any degree of really depth, anything too much. But we'll hit it this morning. We'll start on this morning. And that is the subject of dispensations. You might say to yourself, yeah, I've heard of dispensations, and yeah, you've mentioned that before, but what's the big deal? The big deal on dispensations is that if you don't really have it wired and nailed, your objectivity, your grasp of the Bible is just hanging out there. There are just certain things that you have to get your ducks in a row. You have to have certain preconditioned ideas. You have to come to the book with a particular mindset. People read the Bible for different reasons. Some people don't read the Bible at all. I mean, they might hear of a verse if they happen to go to a church, sometimes, maybe. They may inadvertently be exposed to, hearing a verse or so on TV or radio. But a lot of people, they just do not read the Bible. And if they do read the Bible, a lot of times it's like Bible roulette. You have a question, let's say, that you want to ask God, or you want direction from God, or you want to find the answer to something to satisfy your heart and your soul. And you might be inclined to open up the pages of the Bible, but you have no idea generally where to look, where to go for it. You don't know how to find a particular subject. You don't know all the innuendos, the ins and outs of a particular subject and so forth. So maybe the verse that you gravitate to might not be the best verse for that explanation in your particular circumstance at that particular time in your life. So what do? The answer could be satisfying. The answer could be mystifying. You might not recognize an answer at all. And so the next time that you have a problem, are you going to be inclined to run to the Bible to get an explanation and an answer? Nah, probably not. And so most people just live their lives. The Bible might be a little teeny weeny part of their life, but it is not their life. So what's a dispensation? Well, a dispensation, there's a lot of various explanations to describe what a dispensation is. But basically, it's how God works in a particular time period. And that's not the best word I can use, but it's the only one that comes to mind right now to kind of solidify the whole thing. God works in a particular way to accomplish his purpose. And once the purpose has been accomplished, life moves on. People change, people grow. Knowledge is increased. Experience is increased. And so down the line, God might revisit that same subject matter, but now he frames it in a little bit different way. Not that it's a contradictory different way, but it's an expansive different way. He gives a little more information, a little more text, if you please. And so we go through in a progressive type way. That's why if I've mentioned this a whole bunch of times, when you read the Bible is written by God. And just like any other author on the planet, he has a style, he has a method, he has a way of communicating through the written word. And as life progresses, he'll increase the knowledge, he'll increase the wealth of information. There will be extenuating circumstances that take what he said over here, which was the way he wanted it for this particular time, but now we've moved on. We've got more information. We've grown, we've adapted and so forth. And now we get on this side of the spectrum and things have changed. And so now he gives more information. And it's these periods of the way God works in a particular way that change over a period of time. We refer to them as dispensations. And we say, well, God works in a particular way for a particular time. Then he moves on. And he will work now in this particular time, in this particular way. Then time moves on. And we've grown, we've adapted, we've got older and so forth, more experience. And now that same subject matter, it changes. It's just when you watch the progression of a little kid coming up, going through the diaper stage mode and getting weaned off the bottle and so forth. That we don't stay on a bottle for the rest of our lives. We get past that. We get potty trained after a while, hopefully, sooner than later. And things change. That's the concept of dispensations. God works in a particular way here. He's going to adapt it. He's going to adapt it. And he's going to adapt it until we finally get to the finished conclusion here. There's a verse, Proverbs, chapter 25. Proverbs 25, verse 2 said, "It is the glory of God to conceal a thing. The honor of the kings is to search out a matter." It is the glory of God to conceal a thing. You say, well, why would God want to conceal anything? You don't hand a little toddler a loaded gun. You don't hand a little kid a box of matches. It's the same concept. At the various stages of our lives, we are given, for lack of a better word, certain perks and certain privileges that we get to do based on our age, the strength, how big we are, the mental capacity, the level of experience, and so forth. So as you age, you get to do more and bigger and better things. When you're walking your little toddler down a sidewalk or down in a near a street, you don't let them just run around. You take them by the hand and you hold them, because they don't know that they're not supposed to run out into the street yet. They don't know that they're not supposed to just willy-nilly do whatever they feel like doing. They have to learn, they have to grow, they have to adapt, they have to figure these things out. Well, God looks at us in the same way. There's certain things that he's just not going to give us going out the gate. We've got to grow, we've got to adapt, we've got to learn. We've got to show him that we're ready for the next step. And once we get to that next step, he'll let the leash get a little bit longer. We don't have to have his hand every minute of every day type thing. We can experiment and go off on our own and learn things. It is the glory of God to conceal things. That's his privilege. That's his perk. He made it all. He figured it out. He's got it all sequentially lined up. He knows where he's going. We don't know where he's going. And there's the crux of the matter half the time. We want it lined out. We want it all written down. We want to see this thing from beginning to end. And God says, no. It doesn't work like that. You've got to trust me, God says. You've got to listen to me. I can see the end from the beginning. You can't. You see exactly what's in front of you. You react to that. You don't see 5 steps down the road. You don't see a mile down the road. You don't see an eternity down the road. I can. And so I'm going to have you go through this experience. I'm going to have you learn this stuff right now. Master that. And we'll take the next step and the next step and so forth. So the Bible, in essence, is one great big giant timeline with various chapters interspersed throughout the whole thing. You have to learn it piece by piece by piece. And I don't mean just reading, learning. You have to go through it. You have to experience it. That's why theoretically, the older you get, the wiser you're supposed to be getting, because you've had the experience, you've put the time in, you've made the mistakes. But we don't always see it like that. So why do you read the Bible, if you do? Is it for guidance? Is it for comfort? Is it for direction? Is it for just knowledge, for knowledge's sake? What do you do when you come to a passage that seems to contradict something that you've read before? Do you throw up your hands and say, yeah, the Bible is full of mistakes, just written by men? Do you run to the Greek and Hebrew and figure that that's going to help you get through it? Do you say, well, any misconception in my mind right now, that's on me? It's not on the Bible, it's on me. I just need more time. I need more faith. I need more exposure to the book. I need to just put the time in life and figure these things out. And then that seeming contradiction that we read here, all of a sudden, it seems to go away. It's not as apparent as I initially thought it was. It's not as drastic as I originally thought it was. Time and experience and exposure to the book and living life on a day-to-day basis kind of mellows these things out. And you get wiser. And you get a little bit smarter. And you've had more experience. But a lot of people don't approach the book like that, because the book is not really that important to them. They've just never either been taught that it is important to them, or it's never kind of worked out for them in their agenda. You know, they came looking for a particular solution, and maybe they didn't get it, and they got discouraged, they got bummed out, and they just said, well, Fuliana, it's not for me. I'll look elsewhere. I'll look for yoga, or I'll look for, you know, the Eastern philosophies, or, you know, whatever it happens to be. So we gave it a shot, the Bible. We didn't get the intended result that we were looking for. And we said, food, let it go. And unfortunately, that's the way a lot of us in this Western society have approached the book. We want to get something out of it. And when we don't get what we thought we needed or thought that we wanted, we just gave up on it. So if you can get this one facet down, it's a starting point. It's the starting point. That God wrote this book in such a way that at certain periods of time, he had certain rules and regulations. He had certain ways of doing things with certain results. Time goes on. We learn more. We get more. We've experienced more. And God has changed the rules, as it were, a little bit. And if we don't get those transitions, if we don't get those changes, if we don't realize that God likes to conceal a thing until we kind of get it, and then we move on to the next concealed thing until we get it, and we just progress through life like that. He gets off on that. That's the way he, from the very first 2 chapters of the Bible, Genesis chapter 1, Genesis chapter 2, you can see that quirk in his personality. The way he reveals things. Genesis chapter 1, he gives us the story of creation. Genesis chapter 2, he gives us the story of creation again. But this time with added information, this time with added emphasis, and so forth. And he puts so much more into the second chapter than he did the first chapter, as far as explanation, that some people think it's an entirely separate creation. That God did it twice. No, he didn't do it twice. He's just re-emphasizing and exposing different things that he didn't include in the first recitation of it. And this is the same mode that he uses throughout the entire book. And if you can get that going out the gate, conceptually understand how God keeps updating and revising and adding to something, it will make all the difference in the world to you. So it is the glory of God that conceal a thing. Look in Isaiah chapter 28. Isaiah chapter 28, beginning at verse 9. So Isaiah 28:9 says, "Whom shall he teach knowledge?" Everybody says, "Yeah, I want knowledge. I want smarts. I want brains. I want to figure things out." So the question is posed, who shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make to understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. Let's talk about little babies. Little babies coming out the gate, that's all they know. They know their mom's breast, that's where they get their food, their nourishment, their comfort, everything in life is encapsulated into those milk-forming things. That's what the baby wants, that's what the baby needs, that's what the baby gets. The baby doesn't come out eating steak. They've got no teeth, they've got no digestive system to handle this stuff. They start with milk. That's it. So the question is posed, whom shall I teach knowledge and doctrine? Well, first off, it's those that have been weaned from the milk. You know, when a little kid starts, they don't start in first grade. That's, day 1 or week 2. They got to wait till they're 5 years old or so before they can start school. Why? Because they need that 5-year period of time for their brain to adjust enough that they can get the concept of language, they can understand, they can listen, they can process. It's a process. It's a growth period. And we in our culture figured, well, okay, it's going to take you about 5 years. Some kids a little bit quicker, some a little bit slower, but generally around 5 years, We figured they're old enough to be cut loose and put into school. So whom shall he teach knowledge? And whom shall he make understand doctrine? Them that are weaned from the milk and drawn from the breasts. For precept, verse 10 here, for precept must be upon precept. You have to have a foundation. You don't build anything without a foundation. I don't care if it's a building, if it's a bridge, it makes no difference. You've got to have a base. You've got to have a foundation so that the rain doesn't dissolve the dirt away. So the elements, when they blow against it, that there's a resistance on the bottom that can counteract that force coming in from the lateral positions and so forth. Precept must be upon precept, precept upon precept, line upon line, line upon line. He keeps reiterating this stuff. Here a little, there a little. There's the growth aspect of it. You don't start off in school with algebra or trig or calculus or other stuff. You start with 1 and 1 make 2. Then you go to 2 and 2 make 4. It's a process, a growing process. And if you want to learn the Bible, it's the same concept. It's a growth and it's a process, and it takes time. It takes time. Daniel. Daniel chapter 12. Daniel chapter 12, we got a couple of verses here I want to see. First one is verse 4. Daniel chapter 12, verse 4. But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book, even to the time of the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased. But for now, he's saying, because he gives all this revelations and stuff to Daniel way back in the Old Testament days, like 1,500 years before Christ type thing. Way back. He gives these revelations and these prophecies to Daniel. And Daniel can't wait to write these things down and to preach them and so forth. The guy said, no. Don't write it down. Don't go proclaiming this stuff in that sense. I'm going to take care of that on my end, but for you, just shut it down. Don't worry about it yet. Why? Because we weren't ready for it. That point. We hadn't grown to that point. And then he encourages Daniel, because Daniel gets all bummed out. He says, no, don't worry about it. Knowledge shall be increased. They shall run to and fro, and they're going to get it. But for now, just shut it down. I'm telling you, you're going to write it down, but then they're going to forget it, and they're not going to listen to it and so forth until such a time as they're ready. And then, boom, it'll go out. Same chapter, chapter 12, to verse 9. And he said, go thy way, Daniel, for the words are closed up and sealed to the time of the end. So he's just basically reiterating what he said in verse 4. Just shut it down, don't worry about it. And here he's saying basically the same thing. Words are closed up and sealed unto the end. Because by then, theoretically, on an individual basis, we have progressed, we have learned. History has gone on, life has gone on, and things are different. In some ways, they're always the same. But things change. Technology changes like crazy. Relationships change all the time. Perspectives change all the time. Basic truth is basic truth. It never changes. Laws of gravity don't change. We can suspend them intermittently here and there for short periods of time. But as a general rule, gravity works all the time. Boom. That doesn't change. So it is the glory of God to conceal a thing. He doesn't let the 5-year-old try to have to learn calculus and trig. He'll wait until you've got, in the middle of high school or so before he lets to start that stuff. It's the same with spiritual things. You've got to get off the milk. You've got to get off your mom's sustenance, basically. And you've got to grow up before he's going to trust you with this stuff. In one sense, God is very, very progressive. His character is just the way he works. It is progressive, and I don't mean that in the political sense, where he's progressive, he's woke and all this kind of stuff. I don't mean that at all. I mean progressive in the literal sense of you progress, you grow, you get stronger, you get smarter, you get wiser. 10 years ago, I had a certain IQ. Well, I got the same IQ. But hopefully in that last 10 years, I've learned a little bit more. I've had the life experience now to go with it, that I can do something with it. Whereas the first 10 years of my life, the things that I learned, it was just like a sieve, go in one ear and out the other. It takes a while for you to learn, for you to get these things, for them to make an impact on you. So you have to suffer the disappointments. You have to suffer the setbacks. You have to suffer the disappointments and the getting knocked down, and learn how to get back up. And that just takes time. You don't do it overnight. It takes time. The same thing with understanding this book. You can't just sporadically, once in a great while, just kind of open up a page and point to a verse and expect that process to give you everything you need on that particular problem that you might be going through. It doesn't work like that. You have got to study. You've got to expose yourself to it. You've got to get into it, immerse yourself in it. You've got to read it. You've got to memorize it. You've got to meditate on it. You've got to think about it. You've got to dream about it. And it's in that process that you begin to learn. God is very, very progressive. He starts with little tiny things, like a little embryo, and the little embryo grows into a baby. The little baby grows into a toddler. The toddler grows into a little brat type thing. The little brat grows into a preteen. Preteen gets into the teenage years where the wheels fall off. And then hopefully late teens, early 20s, the kid finally gets their act together. Now they can begin to take all that learning thing for the first 20 years of their lives or so and put it to good use. Now they've got the experience. Now they've got the IQ. Now they've got the strength. Now they've got all the tools that God had intended for them. And now they can begin to apply these things. And learning begins to snowball. It's the same thing spiritually. You have to start as a little baby with just the milk. But Paul says there comes a point you've got to get off the milk. You've got to get onto strong meat. That's where the real sustenance comes in. That's where the bone making and strengthening thing comes in. That's where the muscle strength comes in. God is very, very progressive. He takes us in all facets of our life and treats us initially like little babies, and then he brings us through to adulthood. Everything is a progression. You start 1, 2, 3, 4. Progression. January, February, March, April. Progression. Look in Colossians chapter 3. Colossians chapter 3. Verse 23. Colossians 3, 23. Is that what I want? No. Haha. I got this. My handwriting this morning was really, really bad because I lost that hour's sleep last night, and I forgot last night that I should have gone to bed a little bit earlier, but I didn't. Colossians chapter 3, verse 23. And whatsoever you do it heartily, as unto the Lord, and not unto men, knowing that of the Lord ye shall receive the reward of the inheritance, for ye serve the Lord Christ. If you want to learn this book, you've got to do it heartily. You can't do it half in, half out. You can't only do it when you're in the mood that you have a problem and you need a solution for the problem. I'll be honest though, that is one of the reasons God does give you problems, is to drive you to this book. But that's not the only reason. Sometimes we have problems because we just screw up. We have problems because we don't listen. We have problems because we don't learn. We have problems because we just don't get it. And so God will just keep throwing a problem on there, throwing a problem on there, throwing a problem on there. How's he going to react this time? How's he going to adapt this time? Is he going to learn from his mistakes? Is he going to learn from the fact that he didn't come to me sooner? Is he going to learn from the fact that he didn't listen to me to begin with? Does he know it all the time? When's he going to get over that little fantasy? So God will throw problems in our way. Little kids, when they're learning how to walk or run or so forth, what are they going to do? They're going to trip all the time. Whether they're just walking regular, whether they're running, but they're going to trip and they're going to fall. And in the fall, they're going to hurt themselves. They're going to scruff their knees up. They're going to scruff their hands and their palms up, their elbows up. They're going to hurt. They're going to cry. But there's something that takes place in that brain, in that psyche. You learn something. You learn that you got to pick your feet up a little bit higher, maybe. Or you got to look where you're going. There's going to be some lesson in there someplace. Some people learn it quicker than others. Others they're just doofuses all their lives. They don't learn. They make the same stupid mistakes over and over and over and over and over again. And they just don't get it. Others are a lot sharper. Oh, well, that didn't feel good. Oh, that hurt. Gee whiz, what did I learn here? Oh, let's not try that one again. So where are you on this thing? On learning from your mistakes, learning from the setbacks, learning from the disappointments, learning from the shutdowns and so forth, and the put downs and the exclusion. How do you react to those? whatever you do it heartily as unto the Lord. And in my world, that the first thing that comes to mind is Bible reading, Bible study. If you're going to do it. Don't mess around. This book is not just a panacea for your problems. It's a flashlight. It's a laser beam. It's headlights. It's food. It's sustenance. It's direction. It's warnings. It's comfort. It's love. It's compassion. It's forgiveness. I mean, it's everything. And if you shoehorn yourself into only using it when you've got a problem and you don't know how to maximize the stuff in the book to solve or to help your problem, you're really losing. It's a double whammy on you. You got the problem, which is bad enough. So you go to the one source that you think can really, really help. Oh, the Bible, that's what everybody says. Yeah, go to the Bible. And you go to the Bible and you can't find squat. You say, well, big deal. I thought this was hyped up to be some great, wonderful thing here. I'm not getting anything out of it because you're still drinking the milk. You haven't adapted. You haven't grown. You're still in the milk. Until you get off the milk and onto the strong meat, you're not going to have the bone density. You're not going to have the muscle strength. You're not going to have the IQ. You're not going to have the wealth of experience that you need to make these things work for you. If you're going to do something, do it heartily. With all your strength, with all your mind. Romans chapter 16. It's got a couple more to go here. We'll shut this one down for the day. Romans 16. Romans 16, verse 25. Now to him it is a power to establish you according to my gospel and the preaching of Jesus Christ, according to the revelation of the mystery which was kept secret since the world began. Remember, we looked at Daniel, and God told Daniel, shut it up until the end. At the end, knowledge will increase. They'll run to and fro. They'll be able to get it then. Well, here we are. We're in the end now. Knowledge is increasing. We are running to and fro as such. We're getting these things now because God is now opening them up. He got off on the fact that he can conceal a secret. It is the glory of God to conceal a thing. Now is not the time for him to conceal. Now is the time for him to open these things up. And they are being opened up. Are you on the train? Or are you still sitting there, trusting your mom when it comes for supper time? According to the revelation of the mystery, which was kept secret since the world began, even now, verse 26, but now is made manifest, and by the scriptures of the prophets were thousands of years ago, they wrote these things. But it's now just, God is opening this stuff up. He's revealing this stuff. These guys have had these verses for 1,500 years or so. But now, God is opening these things up. The now is made manifest, and by the scriptures of the prophets, according to the commandment of the everlasting God, made known unto all nations for the obedience of faith. Faith was not the biggie back in the Old Testament. You know what the biggie was? The law. the Ten Commandments. That was the cornerstone of everything in that Old Testament, the law. New Testament? No, it's not the law now. It's faith. That's a dispensation in a nutshell. Law, faith. Do, or don't do, and faith. Trust God. You see the difference? That's a dispensation. The Bible is full of them. It's one dispensation after another, after another, after another, after another. I'll end with this one. 1 Samuel, chapter 1. First Samuel, chapter 1. First Samuel, chapter 3, I'm sorry. 1 Samuel, chapter 3. Now Samuel, he was a young boy. His mom was barren. She couldn't have any kids, and she got all bummed out. She was at the temple one time. Priest saw her. She's praying to God and so forth. And she's just acting like an idiot, basically. The priest thought she was drunk in the temple, and so he calls her out on this thing, and he chews her out, and she says, "No, I know I'm distraught. I know I'm a basket case here, but I can't have kids. That's all I want out of life is a kid. That's it. I'll be happy." But her and her husband, they couldn't have kids. And she said, "If God would give me a little boy, I will dedicate that boy's entire life to the service of God. God give him to me for the first 3, 4, 5 years or so until he's ready to go to school, as it were. And now I'll give him to you guys. He can be a priest forever for God. I just want a little kid." So God gave her a little kid. And she named him Samuel. And sure enough, when he was weaned, when he was old enough to, get away from his mom's sustenance and so forth, she packed him up a little suitcase and so forth, and she took him to the temple. She gave him to Eli the priest, and she says, "He's yours for the rest of his life." And he turned out to be one of the greatest prophets, the greatest men of God in this entire Bible. So he's still a young kid, though. Now, he's left his mom and dad. He's living in the temple, and he's now being trained to be a priest and a prophet and so forth. One night, in a dream, God comes to him. Verse 7, 1 Samuel chapter 3, verse 7. Now, Samuel did not yet know the Lord. He wasn't what we would term saved or born again as such. He didn't know the Lord. Neither was the word of the Lord yet revealed unto him. So he wasn't saved yet. He wasn't born again yet. And the word of God hadn't yet been revealed to him. He's like he's religious. He's not a bad kid, a juvenile delinquent. I mean, he's being trained for the priesthood. But there's that period of time where he wasn't in the priesthood as such. The word of the Lord was not revealed to him. He didn't have communication with God on a personal type basis. My only point in giving this verse is that there is a progression in life. There is a point in time of which you didn't know God. You maybe didn't even know of God. That the Bible was nothing to you. It was just another book that sat on the the coffee table or in a bookcase or under glass or something. But there came a point of which you found God, or more literally, God found you. You were born again. You were saved. You began to read the Bible. You began to incrementally understand the Bible. You grew in experience. You grew in exposure. You grew with it, just life itself. The setbacks, the heartaches, the disillusionment. You grew. You got stronger. You left the milk and you started on the meat. And as you grew and got stronger and more able, then you began to get more effective. You began to be able to negotiate, to figure out things where they were in this Bible, the sequence of the Bible, the structural foundation of the Bible, architecturally, how it's put together. Why is this verse over here and that verse over there? Why does this book come before that book? Why does God accentuate this thing here and kind of let it slide all this way and then boom, hit it again over here? All these things suddenly now begin to get in focus. And all these little changes, all these little differences, these are all referred to as dispensations. This is an unbelievably good study, profitable study. So bear with us. I know today was just an opening thing. It was a shotgun, scattergun type thing. Nothing really sequential or understanding in it, but we're just starting. So next week, we'll hit it in depth. Heavenly Father, I thank you for this book. I thank you for the Holy Spirit who put this book into the hearts and the minds of men that they could write it down. And there was some publisher who put it in a book form and disseminated it to the world. Father, I thank you. You just didn't leave us hanging out there with no direction, with no foundation, with no bedrock, with no plan, as it were, with no agenda. You got it all down here, from the beginning to the end. Every conceivable scenario you've covered. Every conceivable situation you've covered. There is nothing that we can go through or haven't gone through that you didn't make an allowance for and incorporate into this book. We've got no excuse. We've got no reason that when we finally stand before you, that we can say with a straight face, well, you know, I didn't read your book because it didn't cover my situation. Oh, I didn't read your book because I didn't really have any faith in it. Oh, I didn't read your book because it's just another book and who cares? No, we've got no excuse, Lord. We're just lazy. We've never been taught right. We have a different agenda. We have a different goals and a mindset than you do. We want what we want when we want it for us. And what you may want, we'll take it or leave it. If it fits our agenda, okay, we'll go for it. If it doesn't, fully on it. So Lord, be gracious with us. Continue to be patient. Take us one step at a time. Help us to learn from our mistakes. Help us to learn from our disappointments and setbacks. Help us to learn from our success and our happiness. Help us to get the whole picture, good or bad, because it's all profitable. And so, Father, we thank you for your continued patience, for your promise to walk with us, to never leave us, never forsake us. Father, I thank you for all that you've done for us. Help us, Lord, in this next week to find something that we can do to show that gratitude and to show that appreciation and to show that trust in you. In Jesus' name.